Everyone. Thank you for joining this Thomson Reuters webinar on From Digital Drafting to Smarter Contracts. Today we're going to be talking about the state of the art in digital drafting, looking across the entire drafting life cycle from creation of the first draft with document assembly technology through to automated proofreading tools. I've got a great panel member joining me today who's also going to give many practical insights into managing a digital drafting and document automation project. In addition to looking at the state of the art, we are also going to take a look at towards the future to better understand the relationship between digital drafting and emerging technologies like smart contracts and blockchain. My name's Andy Wishart. I'm Global Head of Drafting and Automation at Thomson Reuters. I'm a legal technologist. I've got product management responsibility for a range of drafting and automation products here at Thomson Reuters, such as Contract Express, Drafting Assistant, Dolcara Legal Search. I was previously co-founder and Chief Technology Officer of Contract Express until its acquisition by Thomson Reuters in 2015. Prior to life in legal tech, I was a researcher and lecturer in artificial intelligence and cognitive science at the University of Edinburgh. I'm really pleased and very grateful to have the excellent Natalie Sandpearl with me here today on the webinar panel. Natalie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Andy. So I have been with Irwin Mitchell since 2008, and I was previously a qualified solicitor in the insolvency and restructuring team there. In 2016, I moved across into our document automation team to take up the helm of the project, which internally we know as Autodocs. This is our project based on the Contract Express software, and it is currently deployed across all of our practice areas in our Business Legal Services division. And I'll be talking to you a bit more later about how we use the piece of software, the main benefits that we have seen, and the importance of the role of the legal engineer.
Excellent. Thank you, Natalie. Let's just have a quick look at the agenda and the structure for the webinar today. It's fairly simple and straightforward. I'm going to kick things off with an introduction to digital drafting, perhaps trying to understand the challenges that law firms are facing, and how Thomson Reuters drafting solutions address some of these challenges. And we're going to take a little bit of look at product as well. I always like to not have my webinars be entirely theoretical, but show a little bit of product too. I'm then going to hand back to Natalie, and as she said, she's going to talk about her experience at Irwin Mitchell, reasons to implement, impact as well. And then we'll switch gears a little to look further out on the horizon, talk a little bit about some of the changes that we see coming in the contract drafting space, in particular exploring that relationship between digital drafting or document assembly and smart contracts and the blockchain. And then we'll finish it up with a nice chunk of time for questions. Please make sure that you use the question panel, the Q&A panel within the On24 platform to submit your questions. And towards the end, we'll be reviewing those and plucking out the best ones. Okay, so let's get started and kick off with an introduction to digital drafting. But first, really just some context. And there are three numbers that I want you to think about. 2, 90,000, and 1.6 billion. So what does that mean? Well, the 2 is the average number of hours a lawyer spends on drafting each day. 90,000 is the number of lawyers in private practice in England and Wales, and 1.6 billion is the amount in pounds of billable time written off in relation to drafting. And these numbers, that 1.6 billion is assuming, for example, a £200 per hour average charge-out rate and an 80% realization rate. And we know from our conversations with law firms that clients are pushing back when law firms are trying to bill those clients for time related to drafting. So what are we doing here at Thomson Reuters to help law firms in this area, to help them recover some of that time written off? Well, we're helping to reduce the time that it takes to draft documents and to review documents and to edit documents so that you can free up resources to focus on the work that clients will pay for. That's your legal expertise, your legal advice. And we're really helping in a number of key areas across the larger transactional workflow. And if we break that down, there are probably 4 particular areas of interest, like getting up to speed. What I'm preparing the lawyer prior to drafting a document with knowledge and information. Perhaps there's also a step of you leveraging your own resources within your firm, perhaps finding precedents. And then there's the drafting of that first document, how to author that first draft of a document. But that doesn't end there. There's a review and editing cycles as well. So how do we, across that transactional workflow, speed up that overall drafting process? Let's start in the top left, getting up to speed. It's practical law that's providing drafting know-how, through our guidance notes, practice notes, even flat standard agreements to get you started quickly. And also included within the Practical Law platform is the Fast Draft document automation feature based upon the Contract Express platform, where a number of those flat standard agreements have been automated, enabling users to jump straight into completing an online Q&A that's going to select the right clauses for the right scenario. If we move clockwise, then and consider the leveraging of firm resources, here we're really stepping into a world of knowledge management. And with Solcara Legal Search, you can have a single search interface which allows users to search for past work products, whether that product is sitting within your document management system, maybe your cloud collaboration portal like HiQ, or perhaps it's a resource that's sitting and located on a range of online legal services which you're subscribing to. And that legal search can federate across all of those instances to be able to find that prior work product. But it's the bottom half that we're going to be focusing on more today. Bottom right, that's about addressing the creation of the first draft and creation of custom documents. So whereas Fast Draft within Practical Law gives you access to standard agreements in Practical Law, a subscription for Contract Express enables you to build your own automated templates from your precedent bank or customize those Practical Law templates as well. It also contains workflow collaboration capabilities for internal and client-based collaboration too. But we know that the transactional workflow doesn't stop at the creation of that first draft. Reviewing and editing documents occurs afterwards. And that's where we address really automating that proofreading process, that as the documents are edited and converged from that original first draft, perhaps within Contract Express, we provide the tools to help maintain that level of quality and consistency. Okay, now to roll that together into thinking about the benefits of a digital drafting platform and a digital drafting solution, it's about a number of things, but I think the ones that I wanted to highlight the most here, reduction of risk, really, because if you're creating documents from standard pre-approved templates, you're reducing that risk and reducing the potential for errors. But at the same time, being able to create the best work product in the shortest amount of time. And that sort of speed, I think, is also linked to alternative fee arrangements. If you're involved in alternative fee arrangements like flat fees or other alternative approaches to fees, you need predictability in order to maintain a profitable margin, particularly where the margins are really slim. So automation of the drafting process helps with that increase in matter velocity, that you could get through more work more quickly. There's a knowledge management piece here too within automated digital drafting. You can capture and codify lawyers' expertise such that when they leave the firm, they're not leaving that expertise, they're not taking that expertise with them. The last two benefits, I think, are probably, we're not going to touch on a huge amount about these today, but that's where law firms are using digital drafting and document automation tools to create new business models with clients, providing online legal services that clients could log into to create first drafts. Also, we can see some law firms providing access to automated documents on a free basis through a business development portal or a website that helps bring in new clients, establish brand as well. Coming back to our transactional workflow, as I'd mentioned, I wanted to go deeper on what here at Thomson Reuters we're doing, really to make the user experience, because user experience is really important to us, and make that user experience across those products first class. And I want to show you actually the integration that we've been doing between our document assembly solution, Contract Express, for creation of first drafts, and Drafting Assistant, where we can do that automated proofreading. So I got a couple of a little product walkthrough here that I'm going to just zip through just to give you guys a sense of what that looks like. And we're going to start here within Microsoft Word. And I've got a document open. It's a distribution agreement. And we can see up on the ribbon here the Drafting Assistant tool. So if I select the Drafting Assistant tab on the ribbon, I get access to those Drafting Assistant tools and capabilities. The first one that I want to take a look at is just the basic level of how the tool assists within that review and editing, which is the deal proof part. So if I select deal proof, that's going to open up task pane to allow me to analyze that document. And once that document's analyzed, it's going to then list out under a number of different categories things that it's found within that document. So issues within that document that could be defined term discrepancies. It could be any open issues if it's found any square brackets that still need finishing off. It might also be non-conforming phrasing. You may be referring to something somewhere in one document in one way, and then referring to the same thing in a different way elsewhere in the document. And the scanning tools are going to pick up those differences within those phrases. But let's drill down into that defined term discrepancies. I'm selecting here on the left where we've got a definition. So it's found within the definition section something that's defined more than once. So VAT, we can see here on the right-hand side, has got a duplicate in the definition section. So we can highlight that, select it, and move and remove that from the document. And it will automatically then analyze again to remove that flag and that issue. So let's just close that panel, and then let's just close that Word document. Now, that's great. The starting point here was I created my first draft already. But what if we want to be able to create that draft through an automated document assembly solution like Contract Express? Well, we brought that Contract Express experience into Microsoft Word. So if I select on the drafting button within the ribbon, I can see this build document option. So if I select on build document, it's going to give me access into my templates that I've created within Contract Express. So if I select firm templates, and I'm going to see all of the different categories of those templates within Contract Express. I'm going to select the property practice area here. I can see I've got access to a lease package within that property group. So if I select the lease package, that's going to load the Q&A, the questionnaire from Contract Express. The user remains within Microsoft Word. And we can then start completing that Q&A process. So putting in the parties' information. I'm selecting here that the lease is going to be contracting out of the 54 Act. That's going to result in the creation of further documents within this lease package. Let's skip over this one. I'm going to say yes to rent deposit, so that's going to open up that dynamic decision tree type behavior. And the rent deposit deed document will now be included within the package. I can also preview what I'm creating as well. So I can take a preview of all the documents that are going to be included within that package as I go through the Q&A process. Let's hide that preview and come back to the questionnaire. Let's finish that off with, say, yes to license for alterations. And then we're complete. Once we're complete, the task pane within Microsoft Word is then going to update. It's going to show the package that we've created. We've got 7 documents within this package. I can open up the lease. That's the main lease there. So we can open up that document. I can then save that within my document management system. If I want to make changes, I could go back through Edit Questionnaire, back into the questionnaire to make some changes to that document. Let's also open up the rent deposit deed. Now, here, once we created that first draft, we can then switch into that deal proofing, automated proofreading to check consistency of that document. Now, because we've just created this from a Contract Express template, I would expect to see this. You know, my template needs to be 100% correct. I shouldn't have any issues if I've just generated that from my best-in-class lease package template. So we see no flags on in terms of defined term discrepancies. We can run the analysis tools of Drafting Assistant across the original template within Contract Express, so we know that every document created from that is conforming and compliant. Notice down towards the bottom, we've got cited sources. There are 4 there. That then connects through to Westlaw UK to show the linkage with the laws that are referenced within that transactional document. So just to wrap up here on this section, you know, I just wanted to show the types of things that we're doing, thinking beyond just core document automation, thinking beyond that to across the larger transactional workflow. We're integrating Drafting Assistant, our proofreading tool, with Contract Express, our document assembly solution. You know, we're providing a really intuitive, Microsoft Word-centric environment that makes it easier and quicker for those lawyers to be drafting those first documents. Okay, I think let's take a pause here. That's probably enough from me. I've spoken for longer than I'd hoped to. I'd like to now let Natalie give some, you know, real practical insights into the adoption of our Contract Express solution at Irwin Mitchell. So, Natalie, over to you.
Thank you, Andy. So, Irwin Mitchell use Contract Express software, and we have branded it internally as a project known as Autodocs. And it is essentially our internal document automation service, which is available to all of our lawyers across all of our sites in our different offices across the country. And what it does is it allows our users to go onto the Irwin Mitchell intranet and then access a portal from which they can select various different questionnaires to produce rapidly and accurately a number of different documents based on a single set of content scoping questionnaires. So in terms of what do we actually automate? Well, we tend to do a mixture of our best generic precedents, but also we do a lot of bespoke client-specific suites. So moving on to the next slide and the reasons why we have implemented a document automation project. Andy's touched on a few of these already, but just to go over the main benefits again. Number one, I would say, is control of risk. Using a the same set of documents means that you are essentially improving quality and consistency, because each output is a bespoke combination of a variety of different possible text combinations and or particular drafts or particular clauses or documents themselves. The reason it improves quality is because if you're entering the same information once, which is then pushed into various different documents in multiple places, then there's obviously less margin for human error. In this way, it works extremely well to safeguard consistency. Andy also mentioned that it's a very good legal knowledge tool, and there is indeed a lot of synergy between the knowledge management team at Irwin Mitchell and us in the automation team. So we like to use our generic precedents as a base point for our best legal precedents, and we try to get our best legal brains to share with us their best legal knowledge, and we can then codify it and harness it again to make sure that if they were to leave the firm, then we retain the benefit of their expertise. But equally, I think in a modern law firm, people really ought to be collaborating with their colleagues. Essentially, we're trying to move away from people squirreling precedents away in drawers and actually using a tool to help push up standards across the firm. The benefit of it being an internally managed project is that, again, in terms of knowledge management, it's very easy to update. So you simply go into your template, you could run a check across it to make sure the relevant legislations are correct, or if you've got any case citations, and you can very quickly make sure that your templates are updated as and when they need to be so. You can also embed legal knowledge and knowledge sort of driving hints and tips into the questionnaires. You can put checklists in, you could have drafting notes put in there, hyperlinks to internal process flows and so forth, which again, it provides a very good training tool when you are actually trying to get your more junior lawyers to think about what it is they're trying to achieve. You can help guide that mental process. Now, all of this requires top-level collaboration. I'll come to that later on. Another obvious benefit is the efficiency and the time savings. And on average, we see about 80% a return in terms of the time we can save in trying to get our users to produce a first draft. And I think that's a really important thing to note, is that we're not necessarily looking to produce the final version. What we're using here is Contract Express as a tool to get us to that first draft quicker than we would manually. This allows us to reinvest that time elsewhere, and it means that our lawyers are freed up from some of the mundane filling in the blanks on forms, routine drafting, and it means they can actually add proper commercial value and have time to focus on the more complicated technical legal aspects of the work they're doing. In turn, this gives us a competitive advantage. It means that we can offer fixed fee pricing models, which has been extremely popular. Indeed, we've won work based on our ability to offer fixed fee work, which means on some matters it means a blended rate of a fixed fee for particular pieces of work that we know we can do using AutoDocs, together with hourly rates. So knowing that we can save time when we're doing the drafting means that we know our margins, and that means we can pass on our cost savings to clients. So this competitive advantage is great, and we find as well that it's not something that we need to pretend we're not doing. Clients actually love it when we tell them that we're using automation to produce documents. They know that they'll get a higher quality service, they'll get it faster, and they'll actually get it cheaper as well. And in this way, we encourage our fee earners to use AutoDocs as a tool for client collaboration. Certainly, if you are doing a bespoke suite of documents for a client, then it gives you a really good sticking power with that client, because they know that you have developed your time and invested your legal knowledge into providing them with an excellent service. Just in support of all of that, using AutoDocs also means that we can pass the work down to more junior and so less expensive fee earners, but we don't compromise on the quality. Another benefit we see is the data capture. The latest version of Contract Express has a very sophisticated reporting tools and analytics that you can use to actually see how your lawyers are working and how you can actually get the best realization of the time that you're investing into developing your automated documents. So, moving on, what have we seen as some major impacts? So we have just over 700 live templates. They form about 112 suites of documents, and at the moment they're used across all of our practice areas in business legal services. Our strongest usage areas are employment, real estate, and insolvency, and we do have a lot of work coming in the pipeline for corporate and banking and finance in particular. The latter two, I believe, will be there'll be a significant impact on the time to get to the first draft for some of the big, complicated deals they do. So, just to give you some statistics with one of our top areas with employment, they are tending to see an average saving of about 202 hours per month, which equates to an average monthly saving of 12 grand. So using that based on a blended rate of hourly rates. So an annual saving would be approximately £500,000. So you can see that if you can actually translate it into actual figures, it's just an absolute no-brainer. Just to give you another statistic, since August 2016, we've generated over 65,000 documents from our AutoDocs project. So how have we done this? Moving on to the next slide. I think it is a collaboration between various different levels within a law firm, and I think it starts with direct engagement from the top. You have to have your senior stakeholders backing the project. That is absolutely critical to achieve buy-in and scale, and the constant cascading down from them and pushing of your automation project will be absolutely crucial for getting that change piece done properly and making sure that people have trust in the document automation project that you are embarking on. But how do you actually resource it? Well, I mean, at the end of the bottom line is you need to have credibility in the templates that you are automating, and this means that you have to have people at a relatively senior level who are actually developing the content that is then going to be automated. There's no point automating documents which aren't then going to be used by the business because they're not deemed to be either good enough or they're just not in the right style. So what we try to encourage where we have a national team is that we have a number of people either at partner level or senior associateship level who agree on the content, agree on the priority of the documents to be automated, and that you have essentially one person coordinating it within each practice area to work with the legal engineer and develop that content. Once that's all agreed, it really can then be passed down to your paralegals or trainees to be marked up. Obviously, they're a much more cost-effective manpower, and working with the legal engineers, it's simply a case of working through a Word document and adding in layers of conditionality to direct how the questionnaire is going to operate once it goes live. Obviously, supervision is also key to ensure the logic being applied is correct. Then you go into a phase of automation and testing, and then you go to live launch. And this is also where, again, you require the support of your managing partners or exec to make sure that they're also pushing usage of the tool. Another important point to note is integration. So we work very hard at Irwin Mitchell to make sure that the output of the documents coming from AutoDocs can be easily integrated with existing case management systems. So it's all about communication, and then buy-in and senior endorsement is critical. But let's not forget there's also a maintenance piece as well, and this is where you can get your knowledge team engaged too. So professional support lawyers can easily just carry on refining some of the content. We treat all of our templates very much as they're not static documents, they're almost live documents that we continually improve. So who are the legal engineers? Well, at Irwin Mitchell, all of us have a legal background, but you do not have to be an IT expert. Knowledge of Word is really the most fundamental thing that you need to have, which essentially is commonplace. And then it's building a set of instructions and wrapping them around the Word document and the content. So people who are logical and who have an attention to detail make good legal engineers. I think as well to remember, we find that because all of our automators at Irwin Mitchell are essentially hybrids, being people who have practiced law for a number of years and who have then also learned how to code the documents within Contract Express, they have a very good understanding of the context within which the documents that are going to be produced using AutoDocs will be used. This, I think, again, is very good for achieving buy-in and maintaining enthusiasm within the business, because they want to work with people who understand what it is that they're trying to achieve. Then I would say you need to have people who are persuasive and enthusiastic and who are able to manage expectations and spot opportunities. And those are some of the main things that I think are absolutely key to making sure you get the most out of your legal automation project.
Brilliant. Thank you. Words of wisdom, and thank you so much for putting so much thought into the content and the presentation as well, and also extending my thanks to Irwin Mitchell as a whole to allow you to share all of this. I just, before we move on to the third and last segment, I just want to remind everyone on the webinar about the Q&A panel. If you've got questions for Natalie or questions for myself, please get them in, add them into the Q&A panel, and we'll pick those up around about 1:15. Let's shift gears slightly, and let's look a little bit further forward to the horizon. And over the past year, I've been, I think, inundated with questions around blockchain and smart contracts and the relationship, perhaps, between document automation and smart contracts. So, over the past 6 to 12 months, we've sat down here at Thomson Reuters to consider really the role of Contract Express and document automation within this potential future world of smart contracts. And I wanted to start here with this sort of concept and distinction between something called smart legal contracts versus legal smart contracts. And let me try and explain a little bit more about that difference. Now, this is not my terminology. I've got to give credit to the awesome Meng Wang for really creating this distinction. Meng is a serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Legalese. He is a fellow at Codex in Stanford. And a couple of weeks back, I was really fortunate enough to meet Meng over in Stanford, where he presented this extraordinary look back through the history of digital contracting and document automation. It was quite extraordinary, the level of detail that he went to. But it was really there to support this sort of premise that when we think of smart contracts and blockchain, it's not that new, and it has, or at least the concept of smart contracts is not new. It has its origins within an already well-established domain within computational law around the concept of smart legal contracts. So smart legal contracts is not really something that's new. It's really the concept that legal documents could be defined as code. Because if you look at a legal clause, they're generally of the form of, if this happens, then this must happen, else this must happen. They even have variable definitions as well throughout the document. But to encode and truly encode a legal contract and take it from a Word document into a piece of code would require, the creation of some domain language, a language that describes and can reduce a legal clause down into a series of if-then-elses. And Meng and legalese are working on that domain-specific language and see that as a necessary prerequisite into the world of smart contracts and blockchain. An important aspect is really to ensure that if a legal document is encoded as purely programming or code, that code could be verifiable and could ensure compliance. I'll come on to why that's really important when we look at more around smart contracts on the blockchain. So smart legal contracts, a sort of evolution of this concept of legal clauses as code. Whereas legal smart contracts are smart contracts, we're thinking really here around blockchain, but that they are legally binding. So they are legal smart contracts. And maybe the quotations help here with this distinction. But they also require a domain-specific language to be able to define what is going to be entered into the blockchain. But more crucially, they have to be verifiable. Because if you are going to encode a Microsoft Word document as a piece of code and place that on the blockchain that will be executed at some point in the future, you absolutely need to make sure that there are no bugs or errors within that code, because you just cannot stop that code from self-executing. That's the promise. That's the promise of blockchain. So how does this all tie back to the concept of digital drafting? I think, again, I'd like to walk you through a little story, a little product story, walk you through the product where we are making improvements within Contract Express towards that future of the legal documents being smarter through their life cycle to enable us at a point in time to be able to create code from those legal documents. So the first few steps here is just conventional creation of a first draft document through a data-driven process like in Contract Express. So if we create a non-disclosure agreement here with Kraftwerk, and I select that that's going to be a one-way agreement over a 1-month period related to disclosing information for the purpose of a business relationship. When we generate that document, coming back to what Natalie mentioned towards the end of her section, we're not just creating documents, we're creating a rich amount of data. And we can see here on the summary screen that we've got the information about the other parties, their address, as well as the generated document. And that's great. We capture that information at the point of creation of the first draft. But if we are in the future going to be able to create a smart contract representation of that contract, what happens when that first draft gets manually edited within Microsoft Word? So we've added some tools into Microsoft Word to keep the data set up to date with the document as we go through that manual process. So if I download that Word document and open that up, through our tools, we're able to pick up the data elements within that document. So if you can see on screen here, I've highlighted the address, 1 Kraftwerk Way. We've got a little token around that called Contract Express, which means that when I make a change to that document or make a change to that value, like updating the address, when I save that back into Contract Express, it can pick up that data change such that when I refresh the data record for that contract, I can see the change to 101 Kraftwerk way. Now, it gets smarter if we make a change within the document to a piece of data that occurs in more than one place. If I change it in one place, like the change from limited to PLC for Kraftwerk, and attempt to save that document, it will tell me that there are other parts of the document that also contain that piece of data. We can update it there and synchronize that change back into Contract Express. So if I do a refresh here, we'll see the change go from Kraftwerk Limited on the other party name to Kraftwerk PLC. So why is this important, and why is it important within the context of smart contracts? I think irrespective of smart contracts, we know that we're collecting a rich amount of information within Contract Express, a lot of transactional information. It's important to be able to keep that up to date. Perhaps as part of your engagement with your clients, you need to report on some of the data within the documents. Perhaps you're going through a repapering exercise for a bank or a property developer with a shopping center and multiple lease units. You need to be able to identify all of the parties within the transactions, the key dates, even potentially identify risks in the contract. And you want to be able to make sure that data is correct, even when those documents are negotiated manually. There is another key aspect here. If we're able to digitize the larger drafting workflow and keep that data consistent, we avoid the necessity for rekeying that data or potentially using some AI-based data extraction tools to get that data back into a form that reflects what's within the legal document. So we can avoid those AI-based data extraction tools if we keep the full life cycle of that document or transaction purely digital. And that would be where the smart legal contracts could then provide that path towards legal smart contracts and the blockchain. So just to wrap up, here is perhaps a more future-looking concept within Contract Express. That the claim really here that we're making that document automation is an enabler for that efficient creation of a smart contract. What we've got on the screenshot on the left is, in fact, the mirror will from Practical Law, the template that the Practical Law editorial team have for a will, which I'm collecting the data in a conventional way within Contract Express. So collecting information about who the will is for, what the arrangement is in terms of the children. But on the right-hand side, we can see that the representation of that will could be encoded in some form of domain language or some smart contract code. The example states that at the event of death, then we need to first check that the children are alive. And if the children are alive, we're going to be splitting the proceeds or the assets 50-50. So for a blockchain representation of a will, that blockchain is going to need access to perhaps an oracle of information from the UK government on deaths, births, and marriages, so that we know during the execution point of that we know at the execution of that smart contract, we've got the data that we need in order to run that piece of code. So really just a conceptual look ahead of a world where perhaps Contract Express is not just generating the conventional legal document that we see on the left with its clause 7 around the gifts to my children, but in codifying that in output in some domain-specific language that could then be used on the blockchain to get the efficiencies of that automatic execution of that contract. So just a little bit of a look ahead there into the horizon on that relationship between digital drafting or document automation and smart contracts. I'm a little bit behind where I wanted to be. We've got just under 15 minutes left. And we'd like to review some of the questions. Thank you very much. We see quite a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to review some of these, but I'd actually like to just start off with one that I had for you, Natalie, that came up as I was thinking as you were going through your section. I talked a lot about the transactional workflow and transactional agreements, and I think the most of the audience that have either used document assembly have started there with transactional agreements, but you hinted at the use in litigation matters. What types of documents have you done there, and what types of stages of litigation?
Okay, so we take the view that essentially any document is capable of benefiting from some degree of automation, and I don't think that litigious documents are exempt from that at all. Simply, topping and tailing a witness statement with parties' names and the case details and court reference, etc., will inevitably save you time and drive consistency. So at Irwin Mitchell, we have developed a one-stop shop for some of the work we do in our high-volume insurance litigation team. And the suite was actually automated by one of our paralegals who is within that team, and I think there's approximately just under 300 documents, and it really is a one-stop shop. So what it does is reflect each stage of the CPR, and it will allow you to input essentially all the case details. It will allow you to generate everything from court forms, witness statements, practice notes, correspondence, instructions to counsel, and so forth, some of which go down into quite some detail in terms of the information that's been entered, some of which will obviously, where appropriate, allow the user to add more bespoke content once the documents have been generated from AutoDocs. The way it's been designed is very good, though, because it means that your set of answers from an initial stage in the litigation process can then be used and fed back into another section of the CPR. So, for example, if you started with the pre-action protocol and then you moved through and then you got to statements of case, you could avoid having to input a lot of the information that you'd already put in about party names and so forth. So again, saving time and driving consistency.
Cool. Brilliant. I see a couple here that are low-hanging fruits for me, which I'll pick up, and then I've highlighted one on here on screen for you, Natalie, for you to consider in a moment. So one question is, does Fast Draft form part of a standard PLC user license? It does. So the Fast Draft feature is part of your standard practical law subscription. That gives you access to around about 300 pre-automated templates. You can use them as they've been defined within that by the practical law editorial team. If you upgrade to Contract Express, you can add your own templates. You could customize those 300 practical law templates, and then you can participate in some of those internal workflows and collaboration that you get with the full Contract Express license. Good question. Do both parties need negotiator for it to work? Great question. So the way in which this works is that the negotiator sits with the lawyer within your firm. The document, when it's sent out, can be sent out. The other party does not need the negotiator add-in. They can make changes to that document. When it comes back from the other side, back to the lawyers within your firm, they then activate the add-in that will find those changes and allow that synchronization of those changes. Natalie, there's one up here around reluctance from senior fee earners. Do you want to tackle that one?
Do I find that I've encountered reluctance from senior fee earners to spend time implementing and drafting the new documents instead of working towards their fee earning targets with normal fee earning work? Yes, the answer is yes. And certainly, if you are looking at saving time within a traditional law firm environment where everybody is their performance is based on how many chargeable units they record each day, then it seems to conflict with that model. But the way that we counter that is to say, well, any time that you are saving, you get to reinvest in additional work. And essentially, you're actually gaining more time. And I think as well, though, the reluctance to challenge that within a law firm, though, you need to have the endorsement of the senior stakeholders to recognise that actually the investment of fee-earning time into long-term innovation and progress is going to have a much greater impact on the bottom line as opposed to simply working towards your traditional short-term chargeable hours per year. So I think there needs to be a open-mindedness of approach and encouragement from right from the top to say that it is okay to actually invest your time into implementing automated content. Yeah.
Great. I see a question here that could only come from an existing Contract Express customer, so it's good to have some of our customers on the webinar today. So your feed changes back to the top template, or does it work with entire suites of documents attached to that top template? So it is the latter. So say, for example, in the example that I used around the lease package, if I had one of those 7 documents open and made a change to that document and synchronized that data back to Contract Express, if a change in one document meant that there was no longer the necessity for other documents to be produced, or if that data existed within other documents, Contract Express will update those documents within that package. So it looks across the whole package and synchronize the data across the whole package. I think, Natalie, I'll get you to pick up the bottom one in a moment. Just one quick one here. Will this presentation be available on YouTube? I think the presentation, for everyone that joins the presentation, you will get notification that when the presentation is available to view, and I think for you to be able to share with your colleagues as well. Natalie, do you want to pick up that bottom one?
Yeah, sure. So who keeps the Contract Express presence at your firm up to date? Is it an ongoing job for the PSLs? Well, I think it's a combination. Essentially, the content of the template resides, the responsibility for that resides within each team. And I find that they are very good at letting me know if things need changing. Yes, it can help to have your PSLs doing, regular reviews of the content, but usually we know about things before they happen. So, for example, with the change to all of the insolvency rules earlier in the year actually meant significant changes to a lot of documents that were on our live site at the moment, and that has taken a while because, again, you're essentially going back to reviewing the content, amending it, and then getting the agreement to the amends between the team because, as I mentioned earlier, making sure that you've got buy-in across your senior lawyers who are in their respective locations is critical. But no, maintenance does, I think, don't underestimate how much time you need to spend on maintenance. But yeah, no, it resides, it's basically a job that everybody gets involved with.
Perfect. We've probably got room for just a couple more. I think I'll come back to you and on this one here, Natalie. But let me pick up a couple here coming from some, I think, more technical people on the call, which is fantastic. So does DealProof interpret natural language when looking for inconsistencies, particularly in the conflicting definitions? Yes. So there is a degree of natural language processing within the analysis tools within Drafting Assistant to pick out those non-conforming phrases, those inconsistencies, and even natural language processing to find the citations to case law and law, and with those links through to Westlaw. There was another one here. Which programming language is the smart contract example on the last two slides written in? I think it was pseudocode, really. It's only an example, but I think in the future that could be something like Ethereum or Hyperledger, some smart contract code that could go onto those blockchains. Okay, one here that we've got, Natalie. This is a great question. What do you think will be the main impact of blockchain and smart contracts on the legal profession?
Okay, this is a huge question because obviously the impact is going to be significant. I think first of all there's going to be a whole new area of law itself involving how to actually police how these contracts and how the blockchain is actually applied. So a new area of legal practice. There'll be data protection issues because obviously everything that goes onto a blockchain is permanent. And there'll be a whole new generation of lawyers with particular skills to navigate the implementation of this. Certainly, I think there'll be new business models resulting from the blockchain where you essentially will be able to link the information keepers like company's house record and land registry directly into your contracts. So this will very much speed things up. So you could have, like instantaneous transfers of title. You could have huge, more sophisticated SDLT. The potentials for use are massive. I think as well with the biometrics and the ability to, use them within contracts. Again, significant changes there. I think as well, the potential to have a legal smart contract which can essentially prevent disputes before they happen because it can actually log into a data source and feed that data into its own terms and conditions. So you could essentially have a smart contract that's able to enforce itself or notify the parties if there's an event that's about to trigger something, and it means that we're able to really rely on contracts to be able to do that themselves. It's essentially that connection of big data, so it's all very exciting.
Brilliant. Fantastic. I'm sorry to say that we've run out of time. We're at the top of the hour. I'd like to just thank Natalie for doing the webinar today with me and for sharing the insights from Irwin Mitchell and also for tackling some of these big questions, particularly this one around blockchain. Fantastic. Lots to think about there. I'd like to thank everyone who's joined the webinar and for staying on so long. I know that we've gone past the hour, so thank you for your great questions. Sorry we didn't get to everyone. And also thank you to Leah here in the room who's been coordinating the webinar here from Thomson Reuters. So thanks everyone. Have a great day. Thank you.